From Wish TV and the All Indiana Podcast Network, this is the News 8 Daily 8 Podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update.
Hi, this is Kylie Conway, and this is your News 8 Daily 8 for Wednesday, August 24th. We're going to get back into that above average territory for temperatures. Humidity values are going to be slightly higher, but it's not going to feel miserable out there like Indiana can at times. It's going to be a really pleasant afternoon, but a little bit warmer for your Wednesday with highs in the mid 80s. And we have been following breaking news all morning long out of the city's Near East Side neighborhood. Indianapolis police say a person is dead after a shooting. It happened around 6:30 this morning on Tuxedo Street. That's near 10th and Sherman, the closest intersection. So far, no word on a victim's name or if police have a suspect. And this follows an overnight shooting near the airport. IMPD told News 8 that someone shot a man while he was driving near Decatur Boulevard and Ameriplex Parkway. That happened just after 1 this morning. Police say the victim was shot multiple times and is stable at the hospital. Investigators haven't released any information about a possible suspect. And today, millions of Americans are waiting to hear President Biden's plans for student loan debt. Will he follow a campaign promise and cancel debt? And if so, how much? According to CNN, the plan will forgive up to $10,000 in federal student loans. This is only for Americans who make less than $125,000 a year. The latest federal data shows that the U.S. has $1.6 trillion worth of student debt right now. More than 43 million Americans carry that debt, with a third owing less than $10,000 and half owing less than $20,000. Biden initially proposed no income cap on the campaign trail, then narrowed his promise in recent months as soaring inflation took a political toll on his administration. Critics of the plan say it will open the White House to lawsuits, which could argue that Congress has never given the president explicit authority to cancel debt on his own. As for the pause on student loan payments, Biden is also expected to extend that until January. Right now, the frozen payments are set to end in 1 week on August 31st. The president has already extended the pause 4 other times. And one of our large local school districts has a new plan to handle a teacher shortage. Pike will pay big. Pike schools just announced a $5,000 signing bonus for new teachers. It's part of a nationwide shortfall in classroom teachers. The job board managed by the state's Department of Education shows more than 1,600 open teaching positions in Indiana and in other job openings in schools, and there are more than 2,900 openings. The National Education Association says the country needs 300,000 more teachers. The president of the American Federation of Teachers says there are problems with finding and keeping people in the job. The union recently ran a survey that shows nearly 80% of school professionals say they're dissatisfied with working conditions that have developed during the pandemic. Many former teachers cite lack of resources and heightened expectations for their decisions to leave. And people who use WIC benefits will need to find other options, at least for this weekend. State officials say they'll be updating the online system Saturday and Sunday, and they say the update will only affect WIC. You should still be able to use other food assistance programs like SNAP. The executive director of Feeding Indiana's Hungry wants to remind everyone that food pantries will still be open, will also be open as another option. The state recommends using your WIC benefits on Friday to get through the weekend. Officials say users will not notice the changes once the update's complete. A newly released letter from the National Archives shows it recovered more than 100 classified documents from former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate earlier this year. According to the letter, the National Archives recovered 15 boxes of documents in January. It says they total more than 700 pages of classified information that should only be viewed in a secure government facility. The full text of the letter was posted Monday night to a website run by an archives representative and Trump ally named John Solomon. It was made public yesterday on the National Archives website. And today in the war in Ukraine, the United States is set to announce $3 billion in additional aid to train Ukrainian forces to fight for years to come. Ukraine is also offering a new casualty count, saying 9,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed since the fighting began 6 months ago. Air raid sirens sounded overnight in Kyiv. The United Nations reports more than 5,000 civilians have been killed and more than 7,800 civilians have been wounded. A man from Franklin is under arrest accused of illegally making and selling ghost guns. The ATF says it started investigating Alexander Clark in May. Since then, the Bureau says it bought from Clark several 3D printed Glock-style guns and devices to convert rifles to fully automatic. Investigators say they also seized about 30 firearms during a search of Clark's home. The U.S. attorney says Clark does not have a federal firearms license and had not registered the weapons. He's charged with dealing firearms without a license, possession and or transfer of machine guns, and manufacturing machine guns. Charges are dropped against 2 Georgia police officers involved in a deadly arrest. The death of Rayshard Brooks in a restaurant parking lot was one of several to fuel social justice protests around the country in the summer of 2020. Investigators say Brooks failed a sobriety test and overpowered officers, taking a taser from one of them, then running away before officers shot him. A special prosecutor has dismissed the murder charge for Officer Garrett Rolfe and the aggravated assault allegation against Officer Devin Brosnan. Investigators used a frame-by-frame analysis to determine what led up to the shooting, including restaurant's surveillance video that shows Brooks turned and tried to use the taser. Attorneys for Brooks' estate say they will file a civil lawsuit. Prosecutors say they believe race played no part in the officer's decision to shoot. A former Louisville police detective is pleading guilty to federal charges from the raid that led to Breonna Taylor's death. Kelly Goodlett pleaded guilty to charges for falsifying the warrant. Taylor was shot and killed in March of 2020. Goodlett is set to be sentenced in November. She could face up to 5 years in prison. President Biden ordered U.S. airstrikes against Iran-backed groups in Syria overnight. The airstrikes targeted a group of bunkers used for ammunition storage and logistics support. U.S. Central Command says it's in response to an attack on a military base housing U.S. troops in Syria last week. U.S. officials say neither attack resulted in any deaths. They say the goal of the Syrian airstrikes was to destroy the bunkers. And to business headlines, nearly 20% of Americans are afraid to check their credit card statements. This as interest rates on cards reach an all-time high. But credit analysts at LendingTree say that during a time of inflation and rising rates, it's more important than ever to keep an eye on them. Credit card balances topped $841 billion during the first quarter of 2022. That's according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Rent prices in the U.S. are rising at the fastest pace in decades, slamming U.S. households across the country. It's according to data from the Bank of America Institute. Median rent payments for Bank of America customers surged 7.4% in July from the previous year, up 7.2% in June. Middle income and younger workers are feeling the biggest pinch. Southwest will now allow customers to pay for an upgrade to the airline's earliest A1 through A15 boarding section through the carrier's app or southwest.com. Until the latest change, passengers could only make this upgrade from the airport. One Tesla owner will never lose his keys again after he implants them in his hand. The bizarre stunt is made possible by a chip called a VivoKey Apex, which uses NFC technology, the same tap-to-pay feature that enables Apple Pay on iPhones. He's part of a beta group of about 100 people who are testing the chips before they're released to the public. Okay, and finally, the group Upgraded Points recently unveiled the results of a fascinating new study on the liquors enjoyed by Americans all across the country. It was broken down state by state. Okay, so here are some of them. Looking at the website right now, upgradepoints.com, it says that, okay, let's see. We're looking at Alaska, chose Scotch. New York, vodka. South Carolina, whiskey. Kentucky, I bet you can guess this one, bourbon. So this was interesting because whiskey, Scotch, and bourbon were apparently broken down into all of the different categories. So, for instance, Kansas chose Scotch. And if you're wondering, Indiana, whiskey. Okay, Hawaii was rum. Georgia was cognac. It's kind of interesting. And Nevada was absinthe. So a lot of variety here, but it seems that across the board, the most popular were whiskey and vodka, and Kentucky was the only bourbon. But again, Indiana got a lot of whiskey drinkers in the Hoosier state, apparently. This has been your News 8 Daily 8 for Wish TV. I'm Kylie Conway. Follow us on Facebook when you search Wish TV, and you can always find us on wishtv.com.
This is the News 8 Daily 8 podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update on demand. For even more, on demand and on the go. Connect with Wish TV on Facebook at wishtv.com and on the free Wish TV mobile app. Thank you for listening. And be sure to like, subscribe, and follow this podcast for updates every weekday morning on the All Indiana Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcast.